everyone who starts CrossFit can just do regular CrossFit for 6 months or maybe 2 years and continually get better. Your body has been exposed to CrossFit, it knows what it's about, and you also know what it is, and then start looking to maybe fine-tune areas. But yeah, anyone that's looking to compete at any level, if you've got to a point where your lifts have stayed at a certain level, you don't feel like you're getting much fitter, your gymnastics isn't getting much better, and you're doing all those things in it's all bundled up in one session, then it's time to stop, separate them, work on them individually, work on your weightlifting, work on your conditioning, work on your gymnastics, build them all up separately, and then bring them back together.
Steve Fawcett in the building. How are you, man?
Good, thank you. Thanks for having me on. Or thanks for travelling to Wigan.
Beautiful. Look at this in the dungeon.
I know, this is my little man cave.
It's cool, man. It's very cool. You just come back from Miami.
Yes.
How was it?
Yeah, such a good time. We've been back for a week or so now, but in terms of competitions, probably the most fun that I've ever had.
Why?
Probably a couple of things, mixture of who I was with, who I was around. There was obviously I was there competing in a team with Taylor, Anita, and Mikey, but we also had a little bit of a JST crew going on with Reggie, Philip, the Danish lad, Philip Biscard, and the girls as well. So there's Evie and Isla there. So it was a good group of maybe 8 or 9 of us. Who've all known each other quite a while, so it was good just to go out to Miami, which is somewhere just completely different to Wigan, or
slightly different to Wigan, yeah, a little bit.
And just go and have a good time, and you know, it's like being around Mikey and Reggie. They just bounce off each other, and you know, there's kind of laser sharp focus when it's time for the event and warming up, and then 10-15 minutes after, it's just back to just having a good time. So it's something that I've not always had that balance of around competition. Sometimes I get myself kind of in the zone, and the fun aspect is maybe just kind of limited because I'm so focused on wanting to compete. So having those guys there it just made it a really fun experience.
Do you think that you can have the level of focus that you want from yourself and from your athletes whilst still having that turn off?
Yeah, it is a very hard balance. If we were there competing and we were going there knowing full well that we were going to be a top 3 team and be getting a games ticket, then whether or not the environment would have changed just kind of naturally, people would have been a bit more serious. I'm not sure, but I mean, I'm sure there is a balance out there, but I think it's a very hard balance for people to find, because I mean, if there's 3 hours between events and this next event is potentially going to be life-changing with the result that comes, then it's quite hard to be, acting the way that we were acting last week. So I'm sure some people have the balance, but I think everyone's balance is just a little bit different.
When you watch it, right, you can see different personalities come across within the games. You know, watching the documentaries and stuff like that, you see some people who are kind of, especially some of the girls, some of them seem to have real polarized laser focus, and others seem to be kind of giggly, spending time with their partner or their coach and laughing and just doing girls stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. And like I say, I think everyone has that balance that's a bit is different. I've got 10, maybe 11 individual athletes, and every single one of them has a different balance. Some like to be, talking to people in between events, going into the crowd and walking around the vendor village and just kind of mixing around with people. And other people just like to go full hermit mode and just shut off from the world. So yeah, I mean, it's what's right and wrong there's probably no particular way. I guess it's just it's down to each person, down to each athlete.
Are there any rules that you think all athletes should try and adhere to within competition periods, like phone use, sleep, nutrition, anything like that?
I think sleep is definitely something that it doesn't differ that much with different athletes. I think everyone needs as much sleep as they can, especially on competition weekend. It's quite hard to get a full night's sleep because of nervous energy. And
I was going to say, I've never been. So you've been to the games, you've been to Waterpalooza, you've been to a number of big comps.
Yeah.
What is your sleep like in between those? Because you're so exhausted from the day, but also so terrified for tomorrow.
Yeah. Personally, I never struggle to fall asleep. it's the waking up. I would wake up a couple of hours earlier than usual, so maybe like 4 or 5 o'clock, because sometimes if you do wake up, let's say, and you go for a wee to the toilet, and then you start thinking,
holy fucking shit, I'm in the games. Yeah, exactly.
5 hours and something in front of arena, in front of everyone, and that's kind of when like that your CNS kind of wakes up properly, because it's kind of going into that fight mode, and then it's tough to get back to sleep. So I'd probably drop sleep by 2 or 3 hours as the lie-in stage in the morning. But it's just important that the weeks before, that it's when you can control it and you can get good sleep, that you kind of get that sleep in the bank. So yeah, sleep's definitely something that they'd all need. And like you say, nutrition is probably a different thing. I've got people that help me with nutrition, help my athletes with nutrition, because it's quite a big, broad thing. There's programming and coaching, there's nutrition. It's a lot for kind of one person to try and control everything. Some people deal well with a lot of food during events. Some people deal well with barely any.
What's your disposition?
I like to eat some food as soon as possible, and it's probably something that I kind of got myself into the habit of. Back in the early days of competing, it was just like a shake and some smoothie and then get by, but then by the end of the weekend it would always take its toll. The fact that there's just no kind of like solid food in there to fuel me. But now, after working with some guys for the last few years, I need to get food.
What's your favourite intra-event snack or food?
It's really boring, to be honest. It is really boring. Just sweet potatoes and some white meat, white fish. Obviously, you've got your carby drinks and stuff like that, but
nothing.
I just try and keep it as bland as possible, because you don't want to be out of breath and a little bit mid-workout.
Jalapeno sauce coming up or whatever.
Yeah, something horrible coming up, some fishy burps. So yeah, it's really not too exciting. Just
what else have you? So you're spending this weekend at Wadapalooza with a team of guys who there's some young ones and some people that have got experience similar to yourself in there as well. Are you giving them coaching with regards to their mindset during that time? Look, guys, we need to think about this. What about speaking to their girlfriends or their partners or their phones, or what are you doing on that side?
Yeah, so a lot of this season and with having Wadapalooza just gone, a lot of my focus towards the athletes is just trying to relay as much knowledge and education to them around competition and training whilst doing it with them. There's one thing like trying to teach them as a coach, and then there's another thing being by the side as an athlete saying you should be doing this, that and the other. And I find that being like in a team with a bunch of guys, or being there at the competition and maybe even competing and training with them, athletes tend to pick up a lot. They'll pick up a lot more than just like having that coach-athlete relationship where coach says this, athlete does.
Leading by example as well as dictating by example. Being
in there and then showing them like why things help. And that's why recently, over the last few months, I've enjoyed getting back into training and competing, because we've got a lot of younger athletes coming up through the ranks, and I find that the results that we've had from JST over the last kind of 8 or so years have come off the back of that, where I've been in the kind of environment of competing and training as well as coaching at the same time, rather than just being kind of step back and saying like, I'm coach now, do this. Like, I find that getting that environment and that group of people together and putting the knowledge and education into them that way is helping the guys develop much better.
It's interesting to see people that lead by example, especially in a sport like CrossFit, right? Every CrossFitter respects hard work.
Yeah.
It's very much a nose grindstone suffering sport.
Yeah.
And I wonder how much extra a coach brings by leading by example versus how much they lose by having to inevitably sacrifice a tiny bit of coaching performance to focus on their own performance.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like there's a real balance there, but I would say certainly knowing Reggie, Mikey, Taylor, so some of the guys that you work with, they're the sort of team I think that would toward wanting to see you live the lessons you're trying to give to them.
Yeah, 100%. And like I'm living that example right now. Is last year I took more of a step away and went more a coaching role. So I coach Taylor and Jack coaches Mike and Reggie, and we very much had like the coach set away, and then they're the athlete. And more recently, we've got more involved and with training with them and competing with them, and they're coming on much quicker. And you can tell they enjoy the fact that the coach is in there with them rather than just being kind of stood there telling them to do this, writing this in the program. If we're in there getting involved and doing it with them, and then able to also teach them and, like I say, educate them on just the smaller, minute details, because they see us doing them, and then they ask, "Oh, why are you doing that for? Why are you not wearing trainers? Why are you wearing lifting shoes? Or why are you not wearing a belt?" Just all the really small, minute details where when you're in that coach kind of away from them, it might, you might not pick up all the small little,
especially coming out from as a competitor first, right? Or a competitor coach, like running in parallel.
Yeah,
that's definitely a unique selling point. There's far more coaches and athletes than there are coach and athletes.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, 100%. And to be honest, I just went for it because that's how I learned as an athlete. I learned as an athlete when I was around other athletes or other coaches that were kind of involved and more practically involved than just kind of a standoff, kind of do as I say. So just kind of took that same kind of method or principle from that I felt that I learned the most, and just passing it on.
Any stuff that you've picked up since over the last couple of years, since the games, since Wodapalooza and stuff, that you've brought into comp weekends that you've thought was a bit of a realisation?
Lots. It's been, in what essence?
Anything, man. So have you realised that having a nap between competitions is a good idea? Have you realised that you need to leave your phone down? Have you realised that you need to spend time warming up, more time, less time, whatever? Yeah, I mean,
it comes down, there's a lot of different things where naps could work, couldn't work, like phones on or off, and again, it sounds like the same answer. A lot comes down to the individual. Some people might just need that little bit of time on the phone just to escape, and other people are getting too involved that it's going to start affecting their performance. I think ultimately it's making sure that whatever it is they're doing, it's keeping them in the right mind frame, the right positive mind frame, to always approach that next event, with the right mindset that they need.
So I suppose you need to know your athlete very well.
Yeah,
for that to be the case.
Like I said, the 10 athletes I've got, my attitude towards each one of them is different. Just two examples of David Shrunk and Taylor Howe. When David walks into the warm-up area, he's got his earphones on, and we call it his grocery face. I don't know if you've heard the Grime song. And sometimes I'm scared of talking to him because he's just like laser focused from when he decides that warm-up's starting. Earphones go in, and it means business from that point. And there's not really much joking around from that point. It's just he wants to get perfect warm-up. Make sure he's feeling like 100% as soon as he steps onto that competition floor, and everything's very kind of serious and just kind of fine-tuned to that point. Yeah, like that's when he starts. Comes off the arena floor, smiles gleaming, have a good time, and he's back to being his usual self. Whereas Taylor just kind of needs a little bit more light-hearted. Just the odd joke in warm-up, and it'll keep her kind of smiling and keep her happy, and that makes her perform better. So it's like I say, it's the balance of the different athletes, and it's understanding what makes people tick, what's too much for certain, and what's not enough.
You got one athlete who needs to get into their head more, and one athlete that probably needs to get out of their head more.
Yeah.
So this is one of the things I think is interesting about everyone that's listening that does CrossFit. They want the secret sauce, right? They want but what's No. I know that you're saying like it's individual and stuff, but like how much sleep do I need, or how long do I need to warm up, or whatever. And the fact that we all are very unique individuals unfortunately makes these prescriptive rules for people to follow. And I suppose this is the value of a coach.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. And all, that whole thing is what we try and get across to all the guys that are on our programs, no matter what tier they're on. They could be on the £40 program where we've got hundreds of people following, or all the way up to just one-to-one individual. And it's just the tools to be able to know, to educate them so that they can make their own decisions for what's the best for them. And if every athlete can then make their own decision, and they know that's the right decision for them, whether it's what to eat after a comp, how much sleep they should get, should they have a nap in between, hydration, wearing certain equipment on some events and not on the others. If they know and they're educated and they can make that decision themselves, then it's going to be far more effective than a coach trying to guess what's right for them. Everyone knows themselves better than anyone else knows them. So education for the athletes is key, and that's something that we try really hard to get across with the guys on the program, so that they can make the right decisions. Because there's not always going to be someone there that can tell you what to do. You need to be able to, if it's middle of an event where it's just you and your judge on the competition floor, something happens, you need to be able to make a decision yourself based off your own knowledge.
It's a great point. You can't rely on your coach as some crutch for every incident which occurs. So you've touched on it there, the fact that JST over the last few years has seen quite a bit of success. What are some of the accolades that you guys have had?
So we were the first. I was the first British male to qualify for the games.
First British male, really?
Yeah, out of regionals. There was actually a guy, Jamie. It was called, I think maybe 2009. Qualified through us. I think he called it sectionals back then. But out of regionals, the first British guy, and then 2 years later, we were the first British team to the games. And then 2 years later, so last year, 2019, we made it back again as the second only British team to get there, and we were the first.
Team of six. So individual, team of six, team of four, with a year's rest in between.
Yeah, pretty much, 2015, 17, 19.
Nice. You've seen some real, that's a number of different
experiences.
And on top of that, firsts, right? So what is it about JST's approach to coaching or programming or training? What's moving the needle here?
Do you know, I think it's doing a lot of little things the right way. And this is something that I only come into terms with now, kind of the older I'm getting, the more people, more athletes I see and more gyms I'm getting about. Is just I'm seeing people just doing the little things not optimally, not the right way, and it is a lot of really small little things.
What
why are you wearing, we touched before, why are you wearing trainers to do your back squats instead of lifting shoes at this point in the season? So just to explain that one itself, there, lifting shoes are going to help most people lift. They're going to help most people squat better. Say most, not everyone, but they're making you better at lifting because it's an accessory that's going onto you. It's not yourself. It's something that you're adding to your body. So learning to squat or lift without that added performance, we call it a performance enhancing accessory, a P. Learning to lift without them and then introducing them closer to competition, so it does give you that effect, is going to put you at a higher level than if you just wore them all year round. Because you're improving your own body's ability to do whatever it is you're trying to do, and then you're adding on the performance enhancing accessory. And there's just that's just one small tiny little thing. Another maybe thing is maybe resetting on your snatch deadlifts instead of a touching. If it's 3 sets of 3 snatch deadlift, so many people I will see just do touch and go, where it's again, it's a very small thing, but you're doing a snatch deadlift for 3 sets of 3 at high percentage, so it transfers into 1 rep max snatch. So doing that touch and go rep is not that second rep and the third rep. It's not transferring into your 1 rep where you're pulling it from a dead stop off the floor. And like I say, loads of really small, tiny things. And this is what I'm having a lot of fun doing now, is educating the likes of Taylor, David and Mikey and Reggie with Jack, to get all the really small details of how to live the life and how to approach a training session, how to recover from a training session, you know, when to supplement, when to time certain meals, like all these fine little details, and we call them inches. All of them done the right way over, say, if all of them done the right way over 1 week is 10 things that you've 10 inches. That done for 6 months is just, then it starts to snowball.
Yards.
And yeah, exactly, yards and miles. But that's something that I only really now have realised that we'd started doing. From the beginning. So it's stuff that I had learnt and passed down from other coaches and other athletes I had competed and worked with. And then we kind of had this group in the beginning at JST. We had this group of maybe 10 or so athletes where we'd always be training together. If someone was doing something wrong, if someone was wearing lifting shoes when it didn't really make sense for them to wear lifting shoes, they'd be told in a nice way and said, look, you should just not wear them because this, that and the other. Belts would only be used at a certain stage, and then coaching cues and techniques, you know, little things that just get tweaked, but going round and round in those 10 people for weeks, months and years on end made those 10 people get to a high level. And then that kind of snowballed again, that people wanted to get involved, and the whole knowledge and education of just kind of training, living, and having the professional lifestyle that an athlete needs to grow and to develop, rather than just like the actual training session that they're completing.
One of the things that Reggie mentioned to me the other day was the professionalism that he sees when training with you guys, that he really says he struggles to see elsewhere. And what I find interesting about that, you know, all of the CrossFitters that are listening, there are two. CrossFit's problem is that it is two things. It is a training methodology, but also a competitive sport. And there are some people who do it because they like to train CrossFit, and there are some people who train CrossFit because they like to compete in CrossFit. And the fact that you have those two things running side by side means that you've got the normal class environment, rock up before, Angela comes in 5 minutes late, she'll just jump on the C2 bike instead of doing the run because everyone's halfway around and blah, blah. And then you've got the guys that want to make it to the games, want to make it to the not regionals now, want to make it to the sanctioned events. You know, you've got those guys who are also in that environment, you know, someone who's still maybe sweating out a couple of beers from last night or whatever it is, and you don't have them segmented off. Whereas if you look at any other sport, you have any semi-professional or professional football team, they don't also have the Sunday league team warming up with them, you know?
And it is two completely different things, and it should be two completely different things, and it should also, to the kind of to the outlooker looking in, it probably looks quite similar, but in terms of how they train and how they live, like, it should be completely different. I put a post out not too long ago actually on our Instagram about it's just called Constantly Varied with question mark, and how an elite athlete's training is rarely constantly varied. If anything, it's just constantly repeated. It's just the same. You get a bunch of exercises or a bunch of workouts that are perfect for this type of person, and it's just repeated and repeated and repeated until they improve, and then it's developed. Whereas like you say, your CrossFit class where you've got Angela comes in, they just want to have a good time, get fit and do different movements, so it's constantly varied and it keeps them on the toes, and everyone has a good time. But for the elite athlete, like, it's so much different. It's so different.
Is progressive overload king in all areas?
Yeah, that's 100%. You know, there's other methods, but I would say because CrossFit, because we cover so many different like modalities in CrossFit, running, swimming, weightlifting, gymnastics, we are still way behind runners at running. So that our training to get better at running needs to be much more simple than Mo Farah's training program. And our gymnastics training is a lot more simple to Max Whitlock's training program, and same goes for our weightlifting. Whereas progressive overload, it can't not work for CrossFitters, because with that, our level is that low compared to these elite athletes. Like progressive overload for Mo Farah probably won't work. It probably not see any.
It'll be much more sort of cyclical periodization of ups and downs.
Yeah, it needs to be much finer detail. But because we're kind of at maybe like, say we're like 70% performance than the guys who are elite athletes in their sport, it can be a lot more simple. And I think it's, people see the people that are top in their sport and they try and copy their methods of training. But I think it's sometimes, especially for something like running, it's too advanced. They're doing training sessions that is further on than them.
Mm-hmm. Certainly one of the things that I remember seeing a few years ago was when Meg had started working with you guys when she moved down to Wigan.
Mm-hmm.
And she was talking about particular ways of programming monostructural work, so rowing and running with splits, taking a time, chopping that up into individual distances at slightly negative splits of that. And then the same for gymnastics, the same again, like do your one set max and then take percentages of that with percentage rest. And, you know, like it's the same for everything, it would appear, in life, whether it be meditation, whether it be learning, whether it be reading, whether it be, you know, whatever your chosen domain of competence is, like pick the thing that you can do at the maximum you can do it for, and then try and make that a little bit more, compound that a little bit more over time each time. And
that in a nutshell is exactly how we would periodize training, where there's phases of training where you do just that, where things are, where rowing and running is trained separately to gymnastics and weightlifting, and then there's phases of training when you're getting closer to competition, where now we've built the base of all these different modalities, and we're going to take that and start mixing it together into more CrossFit or event style workout, so that your body is fine tuning to the stresses it's going to come up against. But if it can handle higher rowing volume at higher intensity, because you've trained for 3 or 4 months rowing on its own and specifically worked on that, then when a rowing workout comes up in an event, you've got a better foundation of rowing to then go into whatever it's coupled up with. And if it's coupled up with some gymnastics and barbell, if they've also been worked separately for 3 or 4 months, and the volume and capacity of those things have increased, then once it's all put together, you set yourself up for better performance, because you know, the base of those exercises has increased massively. So the limit on how fast you can do, how many reps you can do, how long you can stay unbroken,
ceiling's been lifted.
It's up, and that's how you get progressively develop your performance, rather than a lot of people see the competitions and they see what they get tested on and where they fall behind on that test. And how many times you heard someone struggling in an open workout and go, I'm going to do that open workout every week for the next 6 months. And it's just like, it's not how it works. I'm afraid it's not as simple. Although training needs to be simple, it's not as simple as just doing that one workout over and over. It needs to be kind of separated. Look at what energy systems, what movement mechanics go into it, and then, like I say, build the ceiling of those elements, and then bring them together when they need to come together.
When it comes to training, that's a really important point that I've heard brought up by Ben Bergeron before, which is the difference between metcons for practice for competition and what you do in training. Is there a pattern at the moment of overtraining metcons for a lot of athletes, or are people starting to catch on to the, I don't know what you call it, specialization of movements?
Yeah, I would hope people, and I think people are catching on. Although it is still hard for people to kind of let go, because it's kind of like a safety thing that if I'm doing metcons, I'm getting better. And, if I'm finishing a workout, completely like depleted, then that's me got better as an athlete. And the thing is, for the first few years of CrossFit, that worked because everyone was that new to the sport that anything would have worked. But it's getting to that level now where the improvements aren't as quick in like the top tier of athletes. So it needs a different approach, and it needs that, like I say, that specialist approach where you're training things separately and bringing them together and actually periodising the training, with a bit more thought than just head in, train hard, be on the floor, and then leave the gym.
Have you got any examples of particular pairings that you like to put together in terms of, daily or periods of pairings where you think some monostructural stuff with some gymnastics stuff tends to go well, or if you're doing muscle ups with rowing, I don't know. But are there some things that you've found tend to lend each other as complements?
You can go into it in however much detail you want, but you've got your skill element of CrossFit, so weightlifting, like max weightlifting or heavy weightlifting, your gymnastics, and your max lifts in general, and then you've got your capacity and threshold end of CrossFit, so your burpees, your rowing, your running, just the really simple things, your assault bike, simple things that anyone can do, and both are limited by different things. So your capacity is limited by your VO2 max, your heart rate, your threshold, and the skills are limited by coordination, strength, balance, and being able to use like different muscle groups from all over your body at the same time, kind of co-contraction of different muscle groups. And it's hard to if you've got something at this end which is like the highest skill, let's say your max snatch is 120 kilos, if you link that in with something capacity based where your heart rate's raised, then the skill breaks down. And that's an obvious example. Like if you was to hit a max snatch from fresh and completely kind of rested and prepared state, and then if you were to do a 1K row at a hard intensity and then hit a snatch, you're not gonna make the lift. You're very unlikely to make the lift, and that's just an obvious example there of how skill and threshold, how it affects each other, and then you can go into quite a bit of detail of how you can work them with each other so that the threshold of the skill gradually increases over time.
So honestly, that's what people are looking to do, right? In competition, and this is what I think the seductive factor of Metcons is. It's that, I hit 90% of my X movement after I did 2K row tests, 30 muscle ups for time, blah, blah, whatever it might be. And that's where it's like, and that's that sort of send it mentality is kind of, that's what people are chasing, right? It's like, can I do the thing which I could almost not do fresh under fatigue? But from a training perspective, that's suboptimal.
It's not that it's suboptimal, it's the timing of things. Like if you're going to have to do that at a competition, then you're going to have to get used to doing that, like when you're getting close to the competition. But long term, doing that over and over again is not going to increase your performance year on year. So let's say it was just rowing into some heavy snatches, and the snatch weight was 100 kilos, and you had mind you, we'll take the strength and depth workout, was double unders and cleans, and the cleans got heavier as you went along. And the heaviest weight for the guys was 140 and the girls maybe 93. And it's heavy for a lot of people. And that's the end of around about a 10-minute workout with, they probably had a good 200 or so double unders by then, and I think another 28 clean reps. So the fatigue has built up quite a lot there. But in order for that athlete's performance to increase, maybe in 12 months' time, if that workout was to come back, the skill level of clean needs to have increased. The threshold level of working kind of those lower weight barbell cycling reps with double unders, which is now probably classed as more of a lower skill exercise. Building the threshold of that, building the skill level of heavy cleans, then bringing them back together, letting the body get used to that kind of that clash of skill and threshold, and then retesting is the only way that type of workout is going to improve, rather than just doing that type of workout over and over again. And I think people are clicking onto it, especially the guys that are at the top. Like they get it. It's the athletes that are like wanting to get to a sanctional level. I find like the guys that compete at a good level around like the country, but they want to get to that European or that international level. And I think it's mainly for them where everything kind of gets a bit mixed, because they want to do so well and they want to improve so much. They get caught into it too much. They see what other athletes are doing at competition. They want to do that, so then they do it. And it's just kind of taking that step back and having a bit more of a sensible approach and a logical approach to what can actually get them.
So that's even level. For the guys that are competing at a local level. Don't need to be going to the games. They need to be specializing. They need to be focusing, periodizing their training properly, and not just pinning themselves with metcons year round.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on your training age. Like everyone who starts CrossFit can just do regular CrossFit for some maybe 6 months, some maybe 2 years, and continually get better. And they probably need to do just CrossFit for, like I say, we say anyone that comes on the program, make sure you've done CrossFit from a box for at least 6 months, so that your body has been exposed to CrossFit, it knows what it's about, and you also know what it is, and then start looking to maybe like fine tune areas. But yeah, anyone that's looking to compete at any level, if you've got to a point where your lifts have stayed at a certain level, you don't feel like you're getting much fitter, your gymnastics isn't getting much better, and you're doing all those things in like, it's all bundled up in like one session, then it's time to stop, separate them, work on them individually, work on your weightlifting, work on your conditioning, work on your gymnastics, build them all up separately, and then bring them back together.
I love it, man. It's so simple.
It is. It's like I said, Reggie always says, you speak with so much logic in it. I don't know if you say it on your podcast, but it makes me wet.
You can say that is by far not the worst thing that we've said. We had a porn star on a couple of weeks ago. So I mean, she'd be good mates with Reggie probably. It does seem really, really basic. Like, why wouldn't you just go away and do a microcosm of what the specialists within each of their disciplines are doing, and then rebring them back together?
Yeah.
Let's say that there's some athletes listening that are those sort of local level comps, maybe scaled one, maybe RX, team or individual. How would you advise your athletes of that standard? How frequently would you allow them to compete?
Yeah, this.
It's the question everyone wants to know, right?
Everyone wants to know and everyone asks. It's such a talked about thing for our athletes on the program, and just generally people that just want some advice. Is they always asking, how often should I compete?
Well, I think the question might actually be, how often can I compete?
Can I compete? Yeah. And the answer I always give is, first of all, you need to decide why you're doing it, why you're training, why you're competing. Are you doing it to get to the highest physical level that you can get your body to, or are you just doing it because you enjoy competing? And although you'd want to get at a higher level, like you just like going to your scaled or your RX comps every few weeks, and just doing them and having a good time. I think that's the first thing that people need to understand and they need to realise, and then off the back of that, can they then make a decision on what on how often they compete. I would say 3 to 4, 3, maybe 4, but definitely 3 competitions per year as a maximum, and try and have them so they're quite closely knitted together. So there's maybe 6 to 8 weeks between them.
Okay, so I guess for somewhere like the UK, that works as you kind of bundle a bunch of comps into summer.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
You can now also add the open prep as probably the last comp the year, or one of the last comps of the year as a part of that?
So like an example maybe is you obviously got the Open now, which is October, and then there's Strength in Depth, which is January, and if there was a couple more either UK or Europe-based competitions in around there, then that's kind of your season to compete. And if your goal is for longer term development, then that gives you potentially 8 months of off season to do exactly what we've just been talking about, just to really break things down and build them back up. When it comes back around to the next year's Open, you will be in a better position to perform better and get to a higher level and perform higher.
Is part of the complication, so one of the complications of why people can't get better whilst competing is that their training in the build-up to a competition requires them to do more Metcon style stuff, which doesn't lend itself to improving progressively over time.
Yeah.
But how much of it is also the demands of the comp itself? Is it 50-50, do you think?
Yeah, it goes hand in hand. That before a competition, the 2 weeks before, the volume you would hope has dropped. Maybe still some intensity there, but the volume should be lower than what it has been in the weeks leading up. So if you say there's a 2 week period there, like before the competition, and then you've got a 1 to 2 week deload or a bit of time off after competition, then you've had a month where training hasn't really been at the volume or intensities to warrant continuing developing. The volume has changed and the intensity has changed, so the performance of that 2 days in the middle is at the best it could be. And then, although 2 weeks is probably nowhere near what most people have off after the competition, that's in there to recover from the stresses from that competition. And then the problem you get is people don't take the 2 weeks, they take 2 days, if you're lucky.
Yeah.
And then they have another one 2 weeks later, and it goes, and they just kind of like snowball into that kind of overtraining. I guess it's a lot of stress on the body in a competition weekend, although not the actual amount of reps. It's the adrenaline, the nerves,
CNS.
The CNS just is in complete fight mode, and then just not letting it come out of that and reset and then go back into training. That over and over and over again, if you're competing year round and you're competing once a month, you can just see now how that stops someone progressing. I had a girl on the program who we basically told that whole story to. She was fully aware of it, but she loved competing. So, that's why she trained. So it was kind of like, what position are we in to tell her to stop competing?
Don't do the thing that you like doing.
Exactly.
I suppose if someone concedes the fact that over time they're not going to progress, someone might very well be able to say, I'm fine with my lift staying the same for the next 2 years if I get to do a competition with my friends every 2 months.
Exactly.
So that, again, like a lot of the uniting principle, it seems like what we're talking about here is understand yourself as an athlete, understand what you want from the sport.
Yeah.
And then how can you facilitate your training and competing cadence to allow you to enjoy that. So the next question, so first off, what everyone wanted to know was how often can I compete? The next question everyone wants to know is how often can I do qualifiers?
It's a hard one now because there's that many of them, although
I see people, kind of the number of guys that are in the gym, they'll do class and they'll be like, oh, what's going on? Are you going to do, should we do some strict press? It's like, oh, mate, no, I'm going to do a qualifier deadline. We've got 3 qualifiers to do before midnight. I'm like, what?
35 minutes up Yeah, it's it's a qualifier is competition because it needs a competition. Maybe is defined that you need to be at your top physical performance, and obviously everyone wants to qualify. If you can do a qualifier and hit it with the same
maximally,
same training intensity. I know a lot of Evander just does that. He'll just do it as his training and accept that he's not going to qualify at the top, but he'll qualify. And you get to competitions, and then you can perform.
And he sees the potentially lower taken position in comp as a good compromise to permit him to maybe be able to train the next day properly or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a clever way to do it, but I suppose that's reliant on the fact that you're sufficiently strong to not send it and still make it.
Yeah, you need to be already at that level to be able to, like, your 90% needs to be still
everyone else
good
is
enough.
100%.
Yeah, exactly. So you need to be still a good athlete to be able to do that. But again, hey, it's just the qualifiers are obviously, you need to qualify to get to a competition, so you need to decide what competitions you want to do. What are the most important competitions of the year? What are kind of like secondary, like priority wise to that, and what's further down the line, and obviously prioritise the ones at the top, prioritise those qualifiers, and then maybe you have to do those qualifiers to get the competition. And just don't get sucked into the hype of a competition or some really good marketing from a competition if it's not ultimately what you want if what you set out to do that year.
You're right, it's very seductive. You see the your three friends throwing down in a stadium in the sunshine. And you're like, fucking hell, like this sounds mint.
Yeah.
But you're right, you have to, it's the guy saying, all right, mate, I know you're driving, but just one more pint. It's the one more pint guy, right? And you're like, fuck, like, I really need to consider, does doing this qualifier align with my long-term goals as an athlete?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I wonder how many people that are listening are pushing themselves. You know, I absolutely love the fact that the UK's got some cool competitions. You know, like other things like the coast to coast bike ride that we just had recently. That's mint. I don't know whether you class that as a comp. I mean, some of the guys I'm probably gonna have to take a couple of weeks off squats, but you know, there's cool shit happening.
Yeah.
But the problem with cool shit happening is it's distracting from training.
Exactly. And you know, I had a podcast with Eric from Weightlifting 101 a few months ago, and we went through in detail my development as an athlete from 2010 when I started CrossFit to up until this point. And for the first 5 years, the common thing that went round and round is that I did the Open and then I did regionals, and then I didn't compete, and maybe I did like the odd one like here and there. But for 5 years running, it was Open regionals until it became Open Regionals Games. And whereas now, like then, didn't have the opportunity to compete every other weekend because there wasn't a competition to do. Like in 2012, there was maybe regionals and one other UK competition, London Throwdown, which changed its name about 5 different times. But the opportunity wasn't there, so you kind of got forced just to train properly. You had to go into like an off-season mode because
there's no distractions.
Yeah, but now like it's you could literally do one every weekend. Which is great. It's great for the industry. There's more people participating in CrossFit and in competitive CrossFit, which is brilliant. But I do think it's limiting the level of like the top level athlete that we're producing. It's stopping people. Like Reg is an example. The lad's got so much potential. He's 23 or 24 years old. You know, he's built like perfectly for CrossFit, and he's got a great kind of mindset for it, but he's kind of been used to doing all these little competitions around the country in it, and because he's done well at them, like that's been his like it's got him going, and he wants to keep entering them. And we're actually doing Battle for Middle Ground together in 2 weeks, and he doesn't know it yet, and I don't know if this will be released.
It'll be after,
but we're going to finish the competition and we're going to tell him that's the last time that you do anything that's not sanctional or games, and because he needs to accept that he's better than that level of competition. Not to call Battle for Middle Ground or any other competitions, but he's just competed at Wadapalooza and he's beat maybe 15 games athlete in a rowing event, and he's 5'4". Like,
I mean, he placed above Alex Smith.
He beat overall. I think he came 18th in the end.
Just came one place above Dan Bailey at Filthy 150.
Yeah, so he needs to realise that he is a high level athlete, but he needs to live and act like a even higher level athlete for him to get
above those.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you don't see like Dan Bailey or Alex Smith going like, the Cincinnati Throwdown, I'm going to go and do that this weekend or whatever. They'll go to like the Rogue Invitational. They'll go to the ones that either raise their profile or fit their season. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So, you know, everything that we're talking about here kind of, it seems, comes back to firstly what your goals, and then secondly, can you let your ego and the inherent excitement of CrossFit as a sport, can you allow that to go away from you so that you can focus on the things that matter?
Yeah. So the goal that you actually, like, long term want, so that when you look back, let's say you're 40 years old and your career's over, you can look back and say, well, I achieved X, Y, and Z and got to the highest level I could physically get to, rather than having maybe been like 10% down from that and done a load of other, not average, just better than average
finishes.
Yeah,
because that's the thing as well. You know, even if you're not thinking about somebody that's maybe making it to sanctionals, if you're in the RX sort of division of a local comp, taking 2 years off to do real focused, periodized, specialized work might mean that you then come back and podium in 2 years' time.
Yeah.
Like, would you sacrifice 2 years of competition of not competing to get that? I think a lot of people probably would, but when you're in the gym and your friends come up to you and say, hey man, the new fucking Battle for Middle Ground workout, or the new this, or the new that's just been released, like, do you want, we should go, John's doing it with them, we can beat them.
Yeah.
Like, how
and
do you...
There's a decent little bit of prize money at these competitions, so that draws people in. So
I tell you what, it was a good one. So I went to Bali. I was in Bali when they had the isotonic drink 350 or whatever it was called.
Right.
Anthanes and his missus won it.
Right.
They won every single event pretty much, and then Anthanes and his missus won it. It was $7,500 each. Prize money. Yeah. So that's the easiest weekend's work that anyone's done in my life.
It is.
You know, just like roll out to Bali, do a couple of workouts, fuck off at 15 grand between you, go travelling for another couple of months. Yeah, exactly.
Deposit down on a house.
Yeah, I know.
You're set.
Easy work.
But yeah, and that is the good thing about being so many competitions in the industry, is that it's becoming easier to earn or make money. It's still hard, but you know, being able to win your Battle of Britain and get it £1,000, like £1,000 for a lot of people is going to set them up for, you know, to support training.
It's a significant. Yeah, that's your supplements and your kit for a year.
Exactly.
You know?
Exactly.
I think
the sponsorships maybe that come off the back of it again.
Yeah, for sure. It's an interesting one, man. Another thing to consider as well, if you're an athlete that's listening, is think about the fact that there are more competitions and that more people are getting into doing them. Everybody else is coming up against the same challenge that you are at the moment, which is that competing is seductive and it seems cool, and there's more CrossFit gyms and more CrossFit members and blah, blah, blah. That means that if you can do something which gives you a competitive advantage, which includes not competing, if you can do the thing that no one else is doing, and you know, you can see on the walls for people that are just listening, we're in Steve's garage gym, and I'm surrounded by shirts and memorabilia from all manner of top level competitions. You can see that the people whom, for them, the top level of the sport is the goal. That is what they're doing. They're not allowing their athletes to compete all of the time. If you want to do that, if you want to move the needle in that direction, then presumably you have to take on board some of those principles.
Yeah, 100%. And I always come back to the feelings that athletes have at the end of a competition. When they see the leaderboard, they see where they've finished, and maybe they're not so satisfied by it. They want to place higher next time. So it's at that moment, those feelings that you have, those like raw emotions that you have there at the end of a competition, is remember those emotions and then plan, if it's that same competition 12 months later, is plan back from there, and how do you get from that position that you're in right now to having the emotions that you want to have. And does that include competing every month or every 2 months, or does it mean like knuckling down? And if you think if the 10 competitors here come 10th, and the 10 competitors above you or 9 above you are going to compete 3 or 4 times, then that's, like we said before, if it's a month out you're training for every competition, that's 4 months potentially that you could gain on them if you're just doing a little bit that's of your training or your lifestyle, of your recovery, your nutrition, that's going to help you improve that little bit more. If that's a little bit more than the person that's just beat you, then in 12 months' time, that little bit more, or that inch, what we say,
inches to yards to miles again,
is going to put you in a better position.
That is your competitive advantage, right? That is your competitive advantage. The difference in your modality, the difference in the cadence of you competing. That is it. So I think I hope that it's given some people a sort of a second thought about whether or not their competing schedule is facilitating their goals in training.
Yeah.
I was listening to something on the way down here about evolutionary psychology and about how the anticipation of an event is often, the pleasure derived from the anticipation of an event is often so much higher than the event itself or the aftermath.
Yeah.
It's why thinking about eating food is often actually better than the food. Yeah. Or the example that was used was you think about a holiday, you book a holiday 6 months in advance, you get excited for 6 months, you're like, fuck, it's going to be amazing. I'm going to go to this beach and there's going to be a sunset, and you're looking at all the Instagram photos of it. And then you get to the beach and you sit down and you're like, well, this is nice, but there's a bit of sand between my toes and my beer could be a bit colder and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
But when you look back, you don't remember the sand. And when you anticipate, you don't think about it.
Yeah.
So what you actually want to do, and you can hack your way into happiness by doing this, is plan things that you want to do well in advance, because you essentially get to enjoy the event and some of the anticipatory kind of dopamine kicks that you get. So plan, right, I am going to do Strength in Depth 2021.
Yeah.
And you're like, right, that's my goal. I get to think about that event for all of this time, you know?
Yeah.
And like, right, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do it. This is when the qualifiers are going to come out, and I'll plan towards that, as opposed to just being ragged around by, this event that I've never heard of but happens to be within 50 miles of me has released some online qualifiers. Should we go bin ourselves tomorrow?
Yeah. And you know what the thing is? It's hard to commit. It is hard to commit to training for 8 months and not be in that position in the competition and testing yourself. Like, the day-to-day lifestyle and commitment to training can get a bit monotonous, and it can be hard, but you just have to keep kind of end goal kind of clear in your head of what you are working towards, and I think that's why people do then just go to and do a competition, because they need that kind of kick to keep them going, keep the motivation high. But if you can kind of just clearly set the path from now until the competition in 8 to 12 months time, and just keep chipping away and just go like month by month, rather than just thinking, it's going to be 8 months until I compete again, and just kind of break it down, then you probably steer away from being kind of sucked into competing every month.
I guess having a training partner or like a little squad of people that are potentially on that more, I don't want to call it more virtuous journey, that more long-term goal journey.
You can bounce off each other a little bit.
Do you think that might be a good way to kind of make that more robust?
And that's probably another thing that we've created there in JST. We've got a group of guys that understand it. So they're not kind of forcing each other. If someone goes and does a competition that wasn't kind of planned and it just came out of the blue, then it's kind of like, why are you doing that? You're supposed to be focusing on Rogue Invitational that's coming up in May or something. And if you have that group that are kind of all aligned in the same kind of mentality of training, then it definitely makes
accountable to each other.
Yeah, it makes decisions a lot easier.
One thing that I wanted to bring up, you mentioned about the CNS frying nature of doing competitions. Talk to me about what it's like taking JST, your business, your gym, over to the games as the first British team, and then talk to me about the aftermath. Like, what was your CNS like before, during, and after?
Yeah, so I mean, I think the most I've struggled is 2015 games. Didn't really have much. The JST compete rowing still, it was around then. There was probably 10% of the amount of people on it as there is now, but it was still there. It was still a thing, and that was probably the only thing, as well as running the gym, that I had outside of training. So training was just like
you had training people to train, and you had training people to train online.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But my own training itself, like my wife would tell you, and any of my friends that are around me, was like, if anything didn't help me with training, then it was a hindrance. Like, it was just, it was kind of out of the way, and that for years and years on end, and then having the competition and it being a bit of a brutal competition, 2015 games, to then coming back to it all just kind of like, it's like happened, and then you see NS still having like that fatigue, like that was I've really struggled. I'd planned 3 weeks rest after the competition, took the 3 weeks rest, came back to training for a week, and then need another 6. It was just, I don't know, it was mentally, because for so long in my head, like it was building up to get to the game for 5 years or so. And then like it kind of, I was in LA for like 4 weeks on Muscle Beach, competing in front of thousands, and then I get back into my front room in Wigan, and it's my dog's wanting to go for a walk, and it's pissing down outside, and then it's like, oh. So that kind of whole like dump of adrenaline and like expectation to then just like back to normality. I think it's that people struggle with, like when you're at a competition, your name's been called out from the MC, and the crowd cheer your name, and then you have a good event and the endorphins are flying. Like you go from that, and then it's suddenly being like over. Like 2 days later, you're back at home, and like,
fuck, where'd it go?
Yeah, it's like that. I think that's what athletes struggle with the most, as opposed to maybe the actual physical effect of the competition. Is that dump. But having experienced that quite badly in 2015, like I'm able to, I know it's going to happen now. I know that I did Wadapalooza at the weekend. I know it's going to be a great time. I knew I was going to come home, and because I expected how it would feel, like it
learned from that experience, 2015.
So getting that across to the guys as well is quite important for them to then regain motivation and have it back, rather than that just hitting them like a bus and being like, oh
shit,
I'm done now.
Yeah.
So I feel like that's, in terms of you call it CNS, but in terms of just kind of having like that dump after the competition.
It's more than just CNS, right? It's like you will be fatigued from the level of work that you've put in, but it's like a socio-cultural thing as well that's been going on. I have been placed in high esteem. Here is egos just getting fucking coal shoveled into it like that. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And I recently did a podcast. I've done 2 with DJs recently. A guy called Christoph and another one called Danny T. And both of those guys talk about their post-show slump. And Danny deals with it a lot better than Chris does. But he's supporting Eric Prydz around the world. He's playing to thousands of people. He's literally living the dream for this guy. And he gets back to the hotel, and it's just him and a room service and a flight in 4 hours' time to go to Buenos Aires or wherever's next on the tour. And it's just lonely and sad, man. And, you see this with people like Avicii, Tim Berg, a DJ who had the capability, had the artistic capacity, but he wasn't able to deal with the socio-cultural ego side, the exposure, that stuff. And people don't see athletes in that same light, right? They don't view them as performers, despite the fact that you have to perform. Like it's in, you're
paying to watch them perform.
It is a performance,
Yeah, 100%. And I guess it's the same for every sports. But that's why you see football and rugby players having a tough time when they've retired, because they've gone from living that life to then retired, and then boom. But it's just kind of that on a different scale, I guess.
So you've had that 2015, 2017. You got to be thinking, right? I need to prepare myself a little bit more gently somehow, or account for it when I come back. And then 19 as well. Like what was some of the strategies that you put in place to kind of bring yourself out of that slump?
Yeah, I think it just helps knowing that that's a thing, and it happens. Like, just so if you're prepared for it, because I wasn't prepared for it after 2015.
No one warned you that it was
going to carry on going, and then it was
ass fisted by some CNS.
So just simply being aware that it happens, and it's normal, because you go from having all those endorphins and having the greatest time of your life to then just being back to your normal life. Just understanding that happens just helps greatly. But also for me, it's just like not making immediate plans like after the game. So people always say to me, "How are you on another comeback? Like you've retired 4 times." And so it's not that I'm having a comeback or retiring. It's that I'm just taking more time off, and then only restarting when I know that I'm ready to build back up training and compete again. If I tried competing through all of 2018, 19 and continued, then I probably wouldn't be able to compete anymore, because one, either wouldn't be good enough, or I'd have just lost love for it. So just not kind of making immediate plans when the main competition, whether it's games or it's Rainhill or whatever you're doing, not having immediate plans for like 2 weeks after to do another competition, is just accepting just to kind of that step down, that step away, let your mind and your body just completely reset, and then get back into it when you're ready to get back into it.
You don't know where your head's going to be at.
No, I mean sometimes it's a great sign is that you 2 weeks after training you're flying again. You can't wait to get back into training. That's
pumped.
Best case scenario. It's a great indicator that your body's in a good place, your mind's in a good place. But a lot of people then just they don't have that feeling. They try and maybe artificially make that feeling, and that's when it just kind of gets a little bit out of control. So, in 2017 and 2019, I just kind of accepted that I didn't need to train. I trained when I wanted to, and then that made me enjoy it because I wanted to do it. Because there's a lot of times as an athlete where you have to do a lot of training sessions and a lot of things that every part of you does not want to do it. It goes back to the constantly varied post that said it's not always a fun thing to do is training, sitting on a rower and doing 12 500-meter rows with a minute's rest. Unless you love rowing, I don't love rowing. It's not a fun thing to do.
No one loves rowing,
no.
Steve.
So it's a lot of those little fights that you have in your head, to do this thing that you don't want to do over and over again for years and years, just to be able to then have a moment of time where
fully let go.
I don't have to do it anymore. It's such a nice feeling, and then you gradually find yourself being I want to get back.
I miss that. Yeah. Well, it's the same as the first bite of ice cream is real tasty, but if I make you eat 5 litres of ice cream, you're by the end of it, it's not that good. There's a quote from James Clear's Atomic Habits where he spoke to a Chinese weightlifting coach, and he said, what separates the very, very best lifters from everybody else? And he says it's the lifters who can put up with boredom the most.
Yeah.
100%. I think there is a kind of this folklore belief that guys at the top end of the sport somehow have a bottomless pit of motivation. Yeah. It's got nothing to do with that, as far as I can see, not in any way being an elite level athlete, but it appears to be who can withstand the monotony and the boredom better than everybody else. Yeah. And a final point there on what you've just said is when you take a love and turn it into a labour, it can sometimes overshoot being a labour of love and just become work. Yeah. If training is your job, but you trained because you loved it, and now you train because it's what you have to do, everyone sees the punch-drunk 45-year-old heavyweight boxer coming back for one more fight because, it looks sad, but there's an equivalent of people doing that to themselves mentally in the gym. Yeah. You're past your passion has left you behind, and you're now just wringing out every last drop of willpower that you've got to get yourself through a training session, which for Taz Nadeem just feels like play to him, for Zach George just feels like, because everything's brand new because he's 12. And an absolute monster. He's actually going to games this year as well, isn't he? He's made
they both are.
Unbelievable, man. How cool.
Yeah, really good. Tyson Fury is an example there. I'm sure he had retired, and then he'd hit that stage where I think recently he was on someone's host show about the depression that he'd gone through. But he had that. Probably had a couple of years off, and who's he just beat now? Deontay Wilder, and he's back to being world champion. Yeah, it's just a perfect example. There is that there needs to be a bit of a reset to be able to account for longevity in competing.
I wonder how many athletes that we'll never know, but that are at the top end of the sport. I wonder how much better Noah Olsen or Matt Fraser or Pat Vellner or Brent Fikowski or Tia Claire Toomey or whatever. I wonder how many of those could be even better if they took a year to regain, because you don't know. No one's ever. This is the sort of thing that no one will ever put in an Instagram post where they'll say, "Do you know what it is? My desire to train actually is waning at the moment, and I don't love the sport, but I've maybe still got 5 years of career in me." It's a real unspoken about mechanism that's happening.
Yeah, that was 100% me in 2016. So for after
Post slump.
Yeah, it's just like in my head, everyone's going, "Oh, you're gonna get back to the games." It's like, yeah, I probably should try and get back to the games because that was what I've been doing for the last few years. I should do it again. And like having struggled to kind of like get the drive to get back training after the games, just kind of like forcing myself into it and just getting back into that routine again, and then just applying everything just as much as I did in 2015 and 2016, and then actually got injured in regionals on the second event in 2016. It was at that point when I got injured, although I was gutted to be injured and I really didn't want to be, like it was like just such a relief to have gotten injured. And looking back now, if I had taken out, if after 2015, if I'd listened to that part of my head that was just saying you shouldn't compete this year, you should just take this year off, improve and get yourself to be a top 10 games individual in 2017, because you need that time. Like there's part of my head that was saying that, but then you got the other part of the head that was saying get back to the games next year and then do it the year after and then do it the year after. Be a 5 times games athlete. And if I look back now, then I wouldn't have competed in 2016 and I would have saved it 2017. The other side of that is that I then competed in an amazing team with loads of great people and became the first team to qualify for the games in 2017. So if I was thinking solely as an individual, then I wouldn't have competed in 2016 and would hopefully have been in a better position in 2017. But then I wouldn't have had the achievements.
Might not have ended up.
Yeah. So it's every cloud is silver lining.
Yeah, I wonder how we can focus on our better nature, so to speak. I don't really know. The thing as well is it's beautiful with hindsight to say, well, yeah, of course I should have taken a break after 2015, but if you'd not got injured and you'd walked into another game spot, you'd have been like, I knew that I actually
through it.
Yeah, exactly. So I want to finish on this actually, because it's something that keeps coming up in discussions that I have with people, and it's how do you know when enough is enough within training? JST, I think, especially with this new wave of athletes that you've got that are coming through, the guys train hard. They do like to go hard. How do you know when it's time to slow down because you're pushing your body too much, and how do you know when you need to push more because you've got some left in the tank?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to just kind of like say a few things. Like I always say, I just inside me just like know when it's time to take some time off. I know for my own performance and for my own life that if relationships or business start like having a negative effect on my own health, like last year, although I competed at the games, I had a kidney infection, a chest infection, and an ear infection.
That's
all within
not good.
like 4 months. And that was between having qualified at Reykjavik and then before the games. So for me during that time, that was like, well, this is enough indication. I've got those infections. Life was busy. My lad was six months or so old at that point. Like, this is too much.
That's
competing
life RX plus.
Yeah. So competing and training to be an athlete, once I'll get through to this game, but once that's done, it just needs to take a back burner until I feel like I'm ready to go again. And it took from August and then December. It was like, right, okay, I feel like I've got everything under control. My health's better. We're in a better routine with the baby, and the business is in a better position for me to be able to bring training back into my life again. I was always training, but bring like what I would class as proper training.
Yeah.
So I guess you've just got to, for anyone else, they've just got to understand like the priorities in the life, and they having a negative effect from training, and is your performance also not benefiting from constantly going and going?
Isn't it interesting that you were saying in 2015 anything that was in your life that didn't serve you was pushed to the side because of training, and then move it forward to sort of 2017, 2019, and you're using those the quality of those other things in your life as the canary in the coal mine to tell you when training's going too far. And it's sort of strangely poetically ironic how that comes back around.
Yeah, and I guess probably just as I've got older, there's been a shift in priorities because business and family has come to the top of the list, and our training is now like number 3. So I guess training is the hindrance sometimes to a family and business. So it's kind of turned on its head. But like I said, for the next year or so, for the little competitions I've got planned, I'm enjoying the fact that it is turned on its head and I'm still able to perform at a decent level and just see where it kind of gets me to with a bit of a different perspective.
I think certainly, watching people like Cara Webb. What's her new name?
Saunders.
Cara Saunders. Yeah. Sorry, Cara. Watching an athlete choose to be a mum in the slap bang in the middle of a career, like 2 second place finishes in a row or something, then kid. Yeah. Like the strength of will that it takes to decide to put your athletic career to the side, and maybe the fear is never come back. I'm sure that she will. She's a monster, but to see people do that, I think it's very, very healthy to see people, having the wholesome family life. Yeah. Because the bottom line is that for pretty much everyone, their family, their child life, everything, that is what is going to be the most important thing. Mm-hmm. But the immediate gratification of, no, but one more year competing, one more year training, you can one more year until it's so late that you maybe can't. And that's a real big sacrifice to make. Yeah.
Yeah. And it just shows that, deep down, and if we're using Cara as the example, that her long-term life goals are maybe in line that it involves kids more so. She's not many people can say they've come second at the games, so she's done twice, and she's probably earning a full-time salary from being an athlete, so she's kind of ticked those boxes. But there's only so long in her life that she's going to be able to tick the start a family box, and she knows that, and she's proven now that she'll always be able to return to the athlete. It's always a bit of no one knows whether you'll always be. Women go through quite a lot in pregnancy, so
changes in hormones, changes in body makeup, changes in everything.
So being able to get back to that level is always a bit of a gamble, maybe. But I mean, she's proven that she's competing actually this weekend in Australia, I think.
Is she?
In the Australian.
How cool is it going to be if she makes it back to the games, man? If she steps back onto the floor.
Did she not do it from the old? I'm not sure.
I don't know.
No. But yeah.
I think, to kind of round up what we've gone through there's certainly a unifying principle across everything, it would seem, which is, what are your goals within training, within life, within work, within business, all the rest of it? And are the things that you're doing on a daily basis moving you toward that? And then on top of that, okay, I know what I need to do. My training needs to look like this. And then how can I ensure that all of the individual parts, the tiny inches, how can those add up towards yards and miles? Yeah. And as long as you're consistently reflecting and moving back toward it, man, it makes it seem really fucking simple. Yeah, I'll just go to the games next year.
Yeah, exactly. That's all you need to do.
Awesome, man. And so people want to find out about JST, where do they go?
Yeah, so Instagram, we're at JST_compete. That's where most of our information is, but you've got jstcompete.com. Those are two main pages, and then our actual programming is on Fitter Training website, which it'll direct you to after there, and you can just take a look through. Shoot us an email or an Instagram message, and we'll help you out.
Beautiful, man. People can come down to sunny Wigan.
They can. Come and get in my little. We've got 6 people in here.
The new box. 6 people. Yeah. Must be warm. Everything that we've spoken about will be linked in the show notes below. Steve, man, it's been awesome. I really appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you, bro.
Cheers. Thank you.